Imagine this. You stand on the precipice of a new life. The path ahead is clear, bathed in a soft, promising light. A new relationship, a successful venture, a period of genuine peace, all within your grasp. It is everything you have consciously longed for, everything you have prayed for. Yet, in the quiet moments before you take that first step, a strange, almost imperceptible force pulls you back. It's not an external obstacle. It's an internal whisper, a phantom limb ache for a state of being you know all too well. Misery, a familiar conflict, a self-sabotaging decision, a sudden spiral of anxiety, and just like that, the new path is gone. The light fades, and you find yourself standing once again in the landscape of your old pain. And in that familiar ache, there is a profound, unsettling sense of coming home. This is the great, terrifying paradox of the human psyche. We spend our lives consciously seeking happiness, striving for fulfillment, and yet, time and again, we unconsciously choose the well-worn roads of our own suffering. We chase chaos, we invite drama, we cling to cycles of self-destruction. This isn't a moral failing or a lack of willpower. It's something far deeper, far more insidious. It's a deep-seated, almost biological, addiction to a state of being that is familiar, predictable, and, in a twisted sense, safe. The misery we know can often feel less threatening than the happiness we don't. So we must ask the great question, why? Why do we repeat patterns that harm us? Why does our pain feel like a home we keep returning to? Why does our inner world resist the very joy we so desperately crave? This is the central enigma that renowned physician and trauma expert Gabor Maté has spent his life unraveling. His work suggests that to understand addiction, in its countless forms from substances to emotional patterns, we must stop asking why the addiction, and start asking, why the pain? The path to unraveling this mystery is not through condemnation, but through a courageous descent into the forgotten history of our own emotional world. This journey will not be comfortable, but the truth it holds is the only key to breaking free. The hidden problem, as Gabor Maté so powerfully argues, is that our addiction to misery isn't a flaw in our character. It's a symptom of unhealed trauma. This is a radical reframe of how we understand addiction. We are not addicted to the substance, the behavior, or the chaos itself. We are addicted to the internal state that these things create, a state that, no matter how painful, is fundamentally familiar. It is a desperate, unconscious attempt to recreate the emotional landscape of our past, because that is where our nervous system learned to survive. Maté's philosophy is rooted in the deep understanding that human development is not a straight line. It's a complex dance between a child's inherent needs and the environment's ability to meet them. When a child's needs for unconditional love, safety, and emotional attunement are not met, their psyche learns to adapt. They suppress their authentic emotions, their anger, their sadness, their fear, to survive in a world that feels unsafe. Maté calls this a strategic adaptation, but it comes at a profound cost. The suppressed emotions don't simply disappear. They get locked away in the unconscious, creating a deep well of pain that a person carries with them into adulthood. This is the psychological root of our misery addiction. The adult mind, still carrying the ghost of that childhood pain, is wired for a sense of reality that is defined by emotional neglect, stress, or chaos. When a new, peaceful, and loving experience comes along, it feels alien and threatening. The unconscious mind, seeking the familiar, will unconsciously pull us back towards a state of suffering. We might self-sabotage a good relationship, create unnecessary drama at work, or engage in self-destructive behaviors, all to return to the emotional home of our unhealed trauma. It is a paradox of our own making. We are drawn to what we know, even if what we know is what broke us in the first place. The philosophical weight of this realization is immense. It forces us to confront the idea that what we call personality, or choice, is often just a sophisticated survival mechanism born of old pain. The path to freedom, therefore, is not about fighting an addiction. It is about finding the courage to tend to the deep, silent wound that has been dictating our lives from the shadows. The unseen consequences of this addiction to misery are not merely self-sabotage. They are the architects of a silent, spiritual malaise that permeates modern life. When we are unconsciously driven by unhealed trauma, we become profoundly disconnected from our authentic selves. The strategic adaptations we developed in childhood, suppressing anger, stifling joy, numbing our sensitivity, become the very foundation of our adult personality. This creates a deep and persistent feeling of being an imposter, of living a life that is not truly our own. We present a polished, functional version of ourselves to the world while a terrified, wounded inner child remains locked in a cage, dictating our most significant decisions from the shadows. The result is a life lived on autopilot, driven by a ghost from the past, leaving us feeling empty even in moments of success. This internal schism manifests in our relationships. Our addiction to a familiar state of suffering makes us gravitate toward partners, friends, and environments that mirror the dynamics of our childhood trauma. If we grew up with emotional neglect, we may unconsciously seek out emotionally unavailable partners, mistaking that familiar emptiness for love. If our early life was chaotic, we may subconsciously create or seek out drama, as that is what our nervous system registers as normal. In this way, we do not just repeat patterns. We actively, though unknowingly, recreate the very pain we say we want to escape. We mistake repetition for destiny, believing we are simply unlucky in love or career, when in fact, we are the unconscious architects of our own suffering. Gabor Maté's work reveals that this unseen consequence is a profound disconnection from our intuition and our true desires. Our nervous system, trained to seek what is familiar and suppress what is authentic, loses its ability to distinguish between what is genuinely good for us and what is merely a repetition of old pain. We stop listening to our inner voice, which would guide us toward genuine healing and peace, because that voice is often the same one we were forced to silence in childhood. The ultimate tragedy of this addiction is not the misery itself, but the slow, quiet death of the self that happens when we mistake the comfort of familiar pain for the purpose of our existence. Breaking free requires us to look not just at our behaviors, but at the deep, ancient wounds that fuel them. The rebellion against this addiction to misery begins with a radical act of self-compassion, not self-condemnation. Gabor Maté's work offers a profound path to freedom, one that begins by reframing the problem entirely. Instead of fighting the addiction, we must tend to the wound. The first step is to recognize that your self-sabotaging patterns aren't a sign of weakness, but a logical, if outdated, strategy for survival. This is a crucial shift. You are not your trauma, but you are carrying it. The path to breaking free is not about willpower, it's about reconnection. We must re-establish contact with the authentic self that was silenced and suppressed in childhood. Maté emphasizes the importance of learning to feel again, to feel the anger you were told was wrong, the sadness you were forced to hide, the fear that was never acknowledged. This is the heart of inner healing. It's a journey of gently reintroducing yourself to the full spectrum of your emotional life, creating a safe space within you where every emotion is allowed to exist without judgment. This is the process of reparenting your wounded inner child, giving it the permission to feel what it was never allowed to feel. This rebellion also involves a powerful, counterintuitive practice: grieving. We must grieve the childhood we didn't have, the unmet needs, the lost opportunities for connection, the unconditional love that was absent. This grieving process, while painful, is the key to releasing the old energy that fuels our misery addiction. As Maté explains, the core wound is the loss of the true self. By grieving that loss, we begin the process of reclaiming who we truly are. This is a form of profound self-love, an acknowledgement that our pain is real and deserves to be witnessed and honored. Finally, breaking free requires an active commitment to mindfulness and self-awareness. We must become a compassionate observer of our own internal world. When the urge to self-sabotage arises, instead of acting on it, we can pause and ask, where is this coming from? What familiar feeling is this trying to create? This simple act of conscious inquiry is a revolutionary step. It separates the adult self, who can choose, from the wounded child, who can only react. The rebellion is not about a sudden, dramatic change, but about a gradual, gentle, and persistent journey back to the person you were always meant to be. The ultimate truth, the final and most powerful realization that Gabor Maté's work delivers, is this: you are not addicted to misery, you are addicted to the desperate attempt to cope with pain you could not release. This is a liberating paradigm shift. All your past struggles, the self-sabotage, the toxic relationships, the cycles of chaos, suddenly make profound sense. They were not evidence of a character flaw or a predilection for pain, but rather they were your system's best attempt to find a familiar and predictable emotional state. You weren't drawn to the misery itself, but to the feeling of being home, however broken that home was. This insight shatters the shame and self-blame that often accompany addiction and self-destructive patterns. You realize that your subconscious was merely trying to survive, trying to recreate a known quantity in a world that felt frighteningly unpredictable. This isn't a license to abdicate responsibility, but it is a powerful invitation to a radical form of self-compassion. The key to breaking free isn't about fighting a moral battle against a bad habit. It's about addressing the deep, internal wound that makes the habit feel necessary in the first place. The liberation comes from understanding that the true path to healing is not to forcibly change your behavior, but to gently change your relationship with your pain. Instead of running from it, you learn to sit with it. You provide the compassion and safety to your wounded inner child that it never received. This is the process of reclaiming your authentic self. The emptiness and misery you felt were not your destiny, they were simply the echo of a need that was never met. By finally meeting that need, by giving yourself the unconditional love and acceptance that you craved, you begin to build a new inner home. The ultimate truth, then, is that your addiction was never the problem. It was a symptom. And the solution is not to fight the symptom, but to heal the cause. What if the feeling of being at home could be a feeling of genuine peace and safety, born not from the familiar ache of old wounds, but from the profound tranquility of being truly, fully connected to your healed, authentic self? What if the greatest act of rebellion is to finally, completely choose peace?